You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. At the end of this show, you're going to get the interview that I did with Lew Freedman, the author of the book on the 1930 MLB season. Always like talking to Lew, good friend of the show. But I gotta start with a love letter. Dear football, I love you. Fondly, Jacob. Never go away again. Talk about starting the season off with a bang. When all is said and done, we could look back at that game yesterday as one of the best games of the season. That's how outstanding this was. Dak Prescott, in his return from injury, showing that he hasn't missed a beat. People are bringing up guys like Mahomes and Allen and Jackson as the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Well, what about me? At the time of the injury, I had a case to be the best quarterback in the NFL. You know what, Dak? You're right. What Prescott did was absolutely outstanding. He completed 42 of 58 passes for 403 yards and 3 touchdowns against a defense that just won the Super Bowl. It was an incredible performance, but not to be outdone. Here's Brady, the GOAT, entering his 22nd season in the NFL. He's been in the NFL longer than some NFL players have been alive. We keep speculating on when Brady's going to retire. You know when he's going to retire? When he stops being good. Okay? He's not the kind of guy that's going to go out on top. He's going to be like Brees. Drew Brees went out with a whimper. It was kind of sad to see. But the reason he did that was because he wanted to know that he left it all out on the field. That's going to be Brady. Until he's bad, he's staying in the NFL. Some people, when they retire, they're really happy. They find new projects. They like to settle down with their family and sleep in on weekdays. Other people get bored to tears. Brady's the kind of guy who would be bored to tears. The reality is, age is just a number. If you can still play at a high level at an advanced age, why not do it? I mean, Brady was surgical in a game where the Buccaneers couldn't get anything going on the ground. Brady completed 32 of his 50 passes for 379 yards and 4 touchdowns. I understand that he threw 2 interceptions, but in all fairness, one was a Hail Mary at the end of the first half, that can be forgiven. And the second one was just a terrible play by Leonard Fournette. He couldn't handle a screen pass, and Trayvon Diggs was in position to pick it off. I thought that was a really nice play by Diggs. I kind of liked what Chris Collinsworth said in the booth. Baseball has an official scorer. Football should have an official scorer. If the interceptions really aren't the quarterback's fault, don't credit it to the quarterback. Credit it to someone else. The reality is, neither one of those interceptions were Tom Brady's fault. Now, as great as the quarterbacks played, and again, give them credit because they were nothing short of outstanding, both of them, the defenses were really bad. As a Cowboys fan, you hoped that Dan Quinn would be able to revitalize this defense. You hoped that Micah Parsons could step up and be a big part of the defense. And I like Parsons. I thought he had a good game yesterday. But it just seemed like more of the same. I understand that the Buccaneers couldn't get anything going on the ground. Okay, the Cowboys did an excellent job at stuffing the run. But you really can't let 3 different receivers have at least 90 receiving yards. That's not going to work. Now, it would be one thing if a guy like Mike Evans was one of those guys, but Evans was really non-existent. He was only targeted 6 times. He had 3 catches for 24 yards. You could even live with a running back breaking a screen wide open for a touchdown. That's one play out of however many there were in the game. The thing is, though, that's not what happened. You have Antonio Brown, the 3rd Buccaneers receiver, going off, having 5 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown. Chris Godwin went off, because of course he did. He's Chris Godwin. He's going to get his. And then you have Rob Gronkowski, a guy who you know Brady is going to go to when he's in the red zone. How do you allow him to get 2 touchdowns? How do you allow DeMarcus Lawrence to try to cover him? All due respect to DeMarcus Lawrence, great player. There is no defensive end on earth that can cover Gronk. Brady saw that happening and his eyes lit up. DeMarcus Lawrence is going to end up covering Rob Gronkowski? That's where I'm going. Of course it was a touchdown. As for the Buccaneers defense, I mean, that was the prototypical bend but try not to break approach. 7 of the Cowboys' first 8 drives either started or culminated in opposing territory. Now, some of those went for touchdowns, but more often than not, they just fizzled out. You have to settle for field goal tries. I mean, Greg Zuerlein, Greg the Leg, he was really shaky. Okay, he missed a 60-yarder. That can be forgiven. And that was kind of a weird decision by Mike McCarthy, because you're giving Brady a shot at the end zone at the end of the first half. What did the Patriots love to do with Brady under center? They used to love to score at the end of the first half and then get the ball back to start the second half and score again. So that way they could score like 14 unanswered points. You were playing with fire there. I understand that Zerline has a strong leg, and the kick wasn't awful. In all fairness to Zerline, out of all the 60-yarders I've seen, his wasn't terrible. But he never should have been in that spot. That was a bad job by Mike McCarthy. It did work out, though, because the Cowboys did get the interception and nearly ran it back to the house. But the other field goal that he missed was a chip shot. It was a 31-yarder. There are high school kickers that could make that field goal. Zerline just shanked it. It wasn't even close. And then he missed an extra point that hit off the left upright. Not for nothing, but if Zerline hits that field goal from 31 yards, the Cowboys win this game. I mean, you can make a very strong argument that the Cowboys were the better team in this game. They ran a lot more plays than the Buccaneers offensively. They won the time of possession battle pretty handedly. They only turned the ball over once. The Buccaneers turned it over 4 times. The Cowboys had every opportunity to win this game. They just blew it. On numerous occasions, they blew it. The Zerline missed field goal, having to settle for a 35-yard field goal. Those are golden touchdown opportunities there. You've got to convert on them. That was something that the Cowboys struggled in doing all last year. You thought it would be improved with Prescott? Granted, this is just his first game back, but so far, so bad. Even towards the end of the game, the Cowboys have a golden opportunity to win. 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. The Buccaneers are driving. Chris Godwin has the first down. He's trying to fight for just a little bit more, maybe to try to get into the end zone, and Damontae Kazee forces the fumble. So instead of the Buccaneers potentially putting this game on ice, you gave the Cowboys new life. Here they are with 4 minutes and 50 seconds left in the game. They have all 3 of their timeouts. Yes, they're deep in their own side of the field, but given the way this Todd Bowles defense was unable to stop Prescott, you had to feel pretty good about your chances if you were a Cowboys fan. So the Cowboys are driving down the field and driving down the field and driving down the field. They commit 2 really bad penalties. There was a holding call on Tyron Smith. He held Jason Pierre-Paul. That hold was called on 2nd and 10 at the Cowboys' 35-yard line. So once the penalty was assessed, it's 2nd and 20 from the Cowboys' 25-yard line. You don't have a ton of time left. Yes, you have all your timeouts, but in a 5-minute situation like that, you've got to go forward. You can't go backwards. Now, give the Cowboys credit because they got 9 yards on the next play, and then CeeDee Lamb got more than 11 yards. he got the first down easily. And he caught the ball short of the sticks. He just made an outstanding cut, got to the outside. Great job by him. Here's another big moment, though. 3rd and 6. The Cowboys are on the Buccaneers 30. We're under 2 minutes at this point. The Buccaneers force a 4th down. Good defensive play. But there's another hold. This time it was Connor Williams. The Cowboys fell out of field goal range. Amari Cooper had to make a 10-yard catch to just get back to where they would have been initially. Now, granted, that hold by Williams wasn't as bad as the hold on Smith, but it's still not great. And again, a bad job by the Buccaneers defense. You know a pass is coming. You've got to be able to stop it. You've got an opportunity to ice the game right here. You just can't seize upon it. So it's 4th and 6 at the Buccaneers 30. With about 90 seconds left in the game, Greg Zuerlein hits a 48-yard field goal. The Cowboys take a 29-28 lead. There were 84 seconds left on the clock. You left Tom Brady with too much time. It's just that simple. You never want to give Brady a chance to win the game late. This is what Brady has done his whole career. Now you've got the big play at the end of that game that set up the eventual game-winning field goal by Ryan Suckup. There's about 24 seconds left. The ball's on the Cowboys 42. It's 2nd and 10. Anything less than a big play, and the Buccaneers are in trouble. At this point, they have no timeout, so it's got to be to the sidelines. Brady drops back. He's looking at Chris Godwin the entire way. Godwin makes up for his big fumble to make a catch. He goes out of bounds at about the 20-yard line. The Buccaneers are in field goal range. Here's the question. Did Chris Godwin commit offensive pass interference on Jordan Lewis? Terry McAulay said yes. Sean Hockley and his crew said no. Here's what I'll say. It's very, very close. I thought the point that Chris Collinsworth made was excellent. Jordan Lewis is retreating. He's running backwards. So even the slightest bit of contact can cause him to hit the ground. I'll give Lewis credit, he tried to sell it. But at that moment in the game, when it's so close, and it can really go either way. I mean, that's an incredibly close call. At that moment in the game, I like keeping the flag in your pocket. I don't want the referees deciding the game unless they have to. Late in the game or in the playoffs, if it's egregious, you call it. If it's not, let these guys play. I liked the no call there. In fact, I'll even say this. Even if it's early in the game, and it's a regular season game, like if that same play had happened in the first quarter, I still wouldn't have liked the OPI call. I just don't think there's enough there. It's very close, there's no question, but I liked the no call. Tom Brady throws 3 straight incompletions to take a little bit of time off the clock. Ryan Suckup hits a 36-yard field goal. That was actually his first field goal try of the game. He had hit all 4 of his extra points, but that was the first time that 3 points were up for grabs, and Suckup drilled it. Give him credit for hitting that field goal. Give the Buccaneers credit for coming up with the idea to throw 3 straight quick incompletions to take just a little more time off the clock. I actually thought that was really smart. Like I said, Suckup hit the field goal, and the Buccaneers won 31-29. The next game that NBC is televising is on Sunday night. It's Bears-Rams. If that game is even half as good as the game that we just saw, we're in for a treat. Alright, it's time for me to make my 3 NFL picks. I didn't keep a record of how I did in these picks last year. If someone wants to go back and check, I give you all the credit in the world. I'm going to try to keep a tally of how I do with these picks. I think I finished with a winning record. I really do, but I have no way to verify it. As always, I make 3 picks. I try to do 2 favorites and an underdog. On occasion, I'll do 1 favorite and 2 underdogs if I really like it. I could even do no favorites and 3 underdogs, but I've got to have at least 1 underdog in there. My first pick is going to be a favorite, though. I like the Bills laying the 6.5 against the Steelers. It's in Buffalo. Hostile place to play. The stadium's going to be full. You know the Bills Mafia is going to be out in force since they couldn't be there last year for their great season en masse. I'm not sold on the Steelers this year. I am sold on the Bills. I did pick them to win the Super Bowl. I think that the Bills will win by at least a touchdown and an extra point. Give me the Bills minus 6.5. As for my upset, you're going to call me a homer. But when I'm looking at the other spreads, I really don't see any that I like for an upset. This game, I could see being an upset, or at the very least, covering the spread. I like the Jets plus 4. Even if they lose by a field goal, I'm right. What's the biggest weakness on this Jets team? Their linebackers and their corners. The Panthers don't have a quarterback that can take advantage of that. Sam Darnold is bad. And you're going to see that as this season unfolds. And let me say this. The other day, I was talking to a Jets fan. I was out doing something. I saw someone in a Jets hat, so I struck up a conversation with him. He said that in this game, even though he's a Jets fan, he wants the Panthers to win and he wants Darnold to ball out. Look, it's one thing if you want Sam Darnold to do well. I disagree with that. I think that looks bad for the Jets. but at the end of the day, after this week, it really doesn't impact the Jets that much. If Darnold and Wilson ball out, okay, I can live with that. But to say that you want Darnold to ball out and beat the Jets, if Darnold is going to ball out and throw 4 touchdowns, and that's what you want, okay, but you better root for Zach Wilson to throw 5. I can't understand the logic of rooting against the Jets for this game if you call yourself a Jets fan. If you think that Darnold was done dirty, that's fine. If you want him to ball out this year, I disagree with that, but I understand the thought process. I just strongly disagree with it. Even if you wanted Darnold to ball out on Sunday against your team, okay, but root for Zach Wilson to do the same thing. To say that you want Darnold to ball out and beat the Jets? Come on. This isn't late in the season where the Jets are tanking for Trevor, where they're out of the playoff race. You can't root against your team in week 1. That's absolutely absurd, and that guy's not a real Jets fan. He's a nice guy, but he's just not a real Jets fan. I like the Jets +4, and my other favorite is the Packers -3.5 against the Saints. Realize, even though this is technically a Saints home game, they're not playing at the Superdome. After Hurricane Ida, the Superdome still isn't ready to host an NFL game. So the Saints are playing at TIAA Bank Field in Jacksonville. In answer to your next question, the Jaguars are in Houston this week. I understand that they're going to be motivated to play for their city that got destroyed by a hurricane again. But I think it's going to be too much. I don't think the Saints are that good this year. How far can Jameis Winston really take you? I think the Saints can be decent. I just don't think they're going to be great. I don't think they have what it takes to beat the Packers. Give me the Packers -3.5. So my picks are the Bills -6.5, the Jets +4, and the Packers -3.5. There are some other pieces of NFL news to talk about. The first is the Steelers making TJ Watt the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. He signed a 4-year extension with the Steelers worth over $112 million. The first 3 years of this contract are guaranteed. The Steelers don't like guaranteeing contracts beyond the first year. They made an exception and then some for Watt. Now, let me just say that the best defensive player in the NFL should be the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. I can't really say that TJ Watt is the best defensive player in the NFL. For my money, that's Aaron Donald. Although I will say this, in terms of total value, Watt is behind guys like Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Myles Garrett, Von Miller, etc., etc. He's just the highest paid defensive player in the NFL in terms of AAV. Which, granted, is nothing to sneeze at, but it is noteworthy. I like this move for the Steelers. I can't say I love it. I know why the Steelers did it. They had to do it, okay? You can't let TJ Watt get away. This guy is one of the best defensive players in the NFL. He's not the best. I wouldn't even call him the second best, but he may be in the top 5. He's definitely in the top 10. According to Pro Football Focus, he had back-to-back years, last year and the year before, where he had an over 91 overall grade. That is incredible. He's had 3 straight years where he's had at least 13 sacks. He's never had less than 8. He is one of the best defensive players in the NFL. Is he worth $28 million a year? You can certainly make that argument. I mean, here's the thing. It's such a high number, but you know who's behind him now? Joey Bosa at $27 million. If the Chargers are going to give Joey Bosa $27 million, the Steelers have to give TJ Watt $28 million. That's how contracts work in the NFL. It's not how great you are. It's just when you're set to hit free agency. It's impossible to criticize the Steelers for signing Watt to this contract. They absolutely had to do it. If you want to call this an overpay, look, $28 million is tough to justify. But again, if Joey Bosa gets $27 million, you can't say that TJ Watt isn't worth $28 million. Like, here's the thing. If you had left it at Khalil Mack and Aaron Donald are going to be the highest paid defensive players in the NFL in terms of AAV, no one's going to go past them, that's perfectly fine. In fact, that's what should happen. The thing is, though, Myles Garrett and Joey Bosa already moved past them in terms of AAV. So, how can you criticize the Steelers for signing Watt to this contract? It's a lot of money, there's no question, but I think Watt will be worth it. He is one of the best defensive players in the NFL. You can't blame the Steelers at all for this. Moving on now to the Baltimore Ravens being snake bit. We knew for a while that J.K. Dobbins was going to be out for the year. That was a tough blow, but you have Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. You're okay. Justice Hill gets hurt. Well, okay. You still have Edwards. He can be the bell cow back. I like Edwards a lot. He's had over 700 rushing yards every year he's been in the NFL. You give him the bulk of the carries, I'm sure he'll do well. And you signed Trenton Cannon, and you signed Le'Veon Bell. You also have Tyson Williams, a second-year undrafted free agent. You're okay. Maybe you'd like a better backup running back, but Le'Veon Bell and Trenton Cannon should be okay. You're not going to use them a lot, but that's okay. Gus Edwards deserves more run anyway. Fast forward to yesterday. Right after I posted the season preview, where I picked the Ravens to win the AFC North, Gus Edwards tore his ACL. Same thing with Marcus Peters. Rashad Bateman is on IR too. But he should be back at some point in time in the season. That means that the Baltimore Ravens are set to enter Week 1 in Las Vegas on Monday Night Football with a running back trio of Tyson Williams, Trenton Cannon, and now Latavius Murray. The Saints cut Latavius Murray earlier this week. The Ravens snatched him up. I've seen a lot of people in fantasy football running to add Latavius Murray. You have no idea how much run he's going to get. In a few weeks, maybe Devontae Freeman or Le'Veon Bell leapfrogs him. I have no idea how that's going to shake out, but the Ravens are just screwed. There's no other word for it. It takes skill to be a running back in the NFL. People say, oh, you could put anyone back there and they'll produce. No. Talent wins over scheme in the NFL. I'll tell you what. I'll take Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, and Derrick Henry as my 3 running backs. You can take their backups. We'll see who wins. You know what? I'll even give you a 4th one. You can have Dalvin Cook's backup. I'll take Dalvin Cook. It's going to be very interesting to see how this affects the Ravens. A lot of what the Ravens do on offense is based on deception. Who's going to carry the football? Is it going to be one of the 2 running backs out there with Lamar Jackson? Or is it going to be Lamar Jackson himself? Or is Jackson going to throw it? Now, if you're Greg Roman, the Ravens offensive coordinator, I feel like you've got to change up the game plan a little bit. Lamar Jackson is going to be asked to do more with his arm than ever before in the NFL. He's never thrown more than 401 passes in a season for the Ravens. That's going to change this year. He's never thrown more than 3,200 yards in a season for the Ravens. That's going to change this year. It has to. Now, granted, that makes the offense a little more predictable because teams are going to be able to sit back and expect Lamar to throw it. The thing is, though, he can still beat you with his legs. Just because it's not a designed quarterback run doesn't mean he can't run. If he sees that nothing's there, watch him escape the pocket and go. This does hurt the Ravens. There's no question. They're doing the right thing by adding a bunch of veterans. Guys like Murray and Bell and Freeman. And taking a chance on a couple lottery tickets like Williams and Cannon. This game against the Raiders is going to be very telling because the Raiders don't have a good defense. Jackson should be able to slice and dice it pretty easily. If he can't, And I know that Gus Bradley is the new defensive coordinator for the Raiders. They've made some changes, but I don't think it's going to be that good this year. I see the Raiders' defense really limiting their ceiling. If Jackson can't slice and dice the Raiders' defense, if the offense is just too predictable, it's too easy to prepare for, and it's negated, it's going to be a long season in Baltimore. And make no mistake about it, that is a possibility. Is it more likely that Jackson can carry the offense by himself? The answer is yes. He's an MVP in this league. Great player. But the possibility that the Ravens falter is there. I will say this, though. The Peters injury, yes, it's tough, but the Ravens have shown an ability to develop these defensive players that come out of nowhere and turn them into really good players. It's a tough loss. There's no question. But I don't think this is going to kill the Ravens. What's going to kill the Ravens, if anything kills them, is their lack of a true running game outside of Lamar Jackson. I don't think the Peters injury is going to kill him too much. Alright, now I'll give you some college football Valk talk. We have 2 games coming up featuring 2 ranked teams. The first one is Oregon traveling to the Horseshoe to take on OSU. This game is going to come down to one thing and one thing only. Can Oregon's defense, which played very well last week, granted against Fresno State, but still, I liked what I saw. Can the Oregon defense generate a pass rush against this excellent OSU offensive line? We heard a lot of talk about how great CJ Stroud was and how great Mayan Williams was and how great Chris Olave was. The unsung heroes of that game for the Buckeyes were their offensive linemen. Guys like DeJuan Jones, Paris Johnson Jr., Nicholas Petit-Frere, Taylor Munford, and Luke Whippler were all outstanding. Can the front 7 of Oregon, which has some very talented players, guys like Kayvon Thibodeau, who granted is questionable for this game, but you know he's going to want to be out there with the entire college football world watching. Brandon Dorless, Popo Omave, Noah Sewell, Mase Funa, etc., etc. Can those guys generate enough of a push on the line of scrimmage to make guys like Stroud, Williams, and Olave work? The triple option that Oregon runs doesn't really concern me from a Buckeyes end of things. They've seen it all before. This is a veteran Buckeyes defense. It's going to come down to the battle in the trenches between the OSU offensive line and Oregon's defensive line. All in all, with Kayvon Thibodeau not being 100% and this game being in the Horseshoe, I can't pick Oregon. I like Oregon this year. I think they're a good team, but they're not going to beat OSU. Give me the Buckeyes. Moving on now to a rivalry game. Very rare to get a rivalry matchup in week 2 of the college football season, but that's what we're getting between Iowa and Iowa State. Last week, Iowa absolutely steamrolled over a really good Indiana team, whereas Iowa State struggled to beat an FCS Northern Iowa team. That really can't give you a lot of confidence entering this game if you're a Cyclones fan. We all know that ISU has talent. Matt Campbell gets courted by NFL teams all the time. Brock Purdy's a talented quarterback. Breece Hall's a talented running back. Xavier Hutchinson's a talented wide receiver. And guys like Oreen Vance, Ayoma Uwazurike, and Ishim Young are talented defenders. It's just that ISU struggled against a Northern Iowa team that they should have dominated. If the Cyclones are going to win this game, they've got to get Breece Hall going. Now that all starts on the O-line, because the Cyclones' offensive line was dreadful. Guys like Sean Foster, Derek Schweiger, Colin Newell, Darrell Simmons Jr., and Trevor Downing really struggled against Northern Iowa. So what are they going to do against an Iowa defense that absolutely destroyed Indiana? I don't think they're going to be able to do much, but the simple fact is, that's what the Cyclones have to do if they're going to win this game. What I'd like to see the Hawkeyes do is flesh out their passing attack a little bit more. Spencer Petras did not impress me last week. He completed under 50% of his passes for just 145 yards. He didn't throw a touchdown. If Iowa is going to make some noise and be considered a CFP threat, Petras needs to step up. It can't just be guys like Tyler Goodson, Riley Moss, Zach Van Valkenburg, Dane Belton, and Matt Hankins. It's got to be the quarterback. I don't like this matchup for ISU. After struggling against Northern Iowa, how can I pick them to beat Iowa? The best thing that could have happened for the Cyclones would have been for them to face another team that really isn't that good. A team like UNLV, who they face next week. Or a team like Kansas, that really isn't that good. Instead, they're facing a really good Hawkeyes team that doesn't bode well for them. How about them Hawks? I do want to talk about a really sad death in the college football world. And that is the death of Terry Brennan, who died on Tuesday. His death was announced Wednesday night, but I didn't talk about it on Thursday because I was doing the NFL season preview at the age of 93. It's okay if you don't know the name Terry Brennan. When you think of Notre Dame head football coaches, you think of guys like Newt Rockne, Ara Parsegian, Jerry Faust, and Lou Holtz. It would take you a very long time to get to Brennan if you got to him at all. But Terry Brennan did some good things in South Bend. After playing for Notre Dame as a running back and winning 2 national titles, Brennan found himself as their head coach. Brennan won national titles with Dame in 46 and 47. His first year as their head coach was in 1954. His first 2 years, Notre Dame was great. They went 9-1 in 54. They went 8-2 in 55. The thing is, though, people said those were Frank Leahy's kids. Those were guys that he recruited. It wasn't until 1956 that people realized how good Brennan was. Notre Dame had to start a lot of sophomores and freshmen. They were just bitten by the injury bug. It didn't go well. Dame went 2-8. The thing is, though, Notre Dame had this kid who could do everything on a football field. He could pass, he could run, he could return kicks, he could return punts. He could even do the punting himself. I'm talking about Paul Hornung. Hornung was so dominant in 56 that even though Notre Dame went 2-8, he won the Heisman Trophy. Imagine that today. A player from a school that went just 2-8 getting the Heisman Trophy. That's how dominant Hornung was. Brennan deserves credit for unleashing that within Hornung. I don't want to say that Hornung wouldn't have won the Heisman Trophy without Terry Brennan, but Brennan helped. There's no question about that. The year after that, Notre Dame earned the nickname the Comeback Comets. They went 7-3. They had some big wins against 10th-ranked Army and 2nd-ranked Oklahoma. They shut out the Sooners 7-0. That ended Oklahoma's 47-game winning streak. It was a really good year. The year after that, Dame went 6-4. The thing is, though, winning records and being nationally ranked isn't enough for Notre Dame. You've got to win national titles. And Brennan never did that. So he was fired after the 58th season. He was replaced by Joe Kuharich. You gotta wonder why Notre Dame made that move, because Kuharich did nothing for Notre Dame. That was a very controversial decision to fire Brennan. Wait a minute, this guy is beating really good teams. Look at what Paul Hornung did. We're competitive every year that we're healthy. It wasn't until Dame hired Ara Parsegian away from Northwestern in 1964 that their fortunes really changed. In the history of Notre Dame football, Terry Brennan is a very underrated figure. May he rest in peace. All right, here's my interview with Lew Freedman.
You're listening to the Jacob Valk Show. I'm Jacob Valk, and I'm fortunate enough to be joined by a friend of the show. It's Lew Freedman. This time we're chatting about 1930, the story of a baseball season when hitters reigned supreme. Lew, it's been too long. How are you today, pal? Okay?
I'm doing good, and it's baseball season, and we're headed for the pennant stretches.
Yeah, and my team is folding like a cheap suit. How about that?
Well, I don't know. There's been quite a bit up and down this year with some, but a few of them just seem to be pulling away.
Oh,
Tampa
definitely.
Bay doesn't look like it's going anywhere.
Oh, no question about that. Giants and Dodgers are great. Brewers are really good. It's going to be a fun end to the season. There's no question about that.
Yeah, I don't think it's a sure thing by any means who's going to come out of that.
No, I don't either. So I'm going to start this interview off by paraphrasing one of the greatest movies ever, Casablanca. Of all the years in all of time in all the world, why'd you write about 1930?
Well, I could say because it was there as applied to Mount Everest, but it was an unusual, unique year in baseball history. The guys with the big sticks were the big guns that year, and it was a bad year to be a pitcher unless you were Lefty Grove.
Right.
And a few others, but it was a remarkable hitter's year. I mean, it's the flip side of 1968's the year of the pitcher.
Right, absolutely. And plus, every year around 1930, it was a pitcher's paradise. This year, it was a hitter's paradise. Would you agree with that?
I think it was a hitter's paradise for a decade almost. Not maybe paradise is too strong, but growing throughout the 20s, leading us up to 1930. That it was definitely the hitter's time, let's say.
Okay. All right. I mean, you had Ruth, and you had Gehrig, and you had Hack Wilson, and all those guys who were great, but certainly pitching was at the forefront more than hitting was. I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
Well, that's what I said. It was just sort of a gradual, Ruth comes along and changes the game, with the home run in that decade. And more players popped up who could hit. They found out if you swing up, you might get the ball up in the air.
Who knew?
That's right. Who thought of it? Instead of swinging down like a bunt. Ty Cobb never got over it.
So, what can you tell us about Hack Wilson's 1930 season?
It's one of the greatest seasons anybody's ever had. I mean, we still know what the record for runs batted is, and it was set that year by this. It really almost an anomaly season for all hitters, but he was sort of the king of 1930 in that sense. 190 RBIs is what it was totaled up to be at the end of that season. Statisticians and researchers found another RBI along the way, so the existing record for runs batted in is 191, and it's hard to imagine that ever being broken. At the time, he also set the National League record for home runs with 56, and that lasted a good while, too. I mean, we, of course, already had seen Ruth hit more, but 56 stood up there for a long time in the National League. And the guy could hit. Hit. I happen to be reading a book about the rise and fall of Prohibition right now, and it didn't apply to him. That was the other part. I mean, he liked to party, he liked to celebrate, he liked to have a drink after a good game.
Yes, he did. Hey, if it works for you, it works for you, right?
Yeah, apparently it slowed him down, though.
Yeah, that's true. Towards the end, it did.
Yeah,
no
he did die young. I think he was only 48.
Yeah. But in his prime, Hack Wilson was one of the best players in baseball. There's no question about that.
Absolutely, it was, and that particular season was sort of the emerald that shine.
No question about that at all. Can you lay out Bill Terry's 1930 season?
Everybody remembers Ted Williams as the last man to hit 400. But 1930, Bill Terry hit 400, hit 401, and that was the last time someone in the National League did so. And, he was a great player also, but he wasn't a big power hitter like the Ruth and Wilsons and Jimmy Foxes. But, man, he could hit for average. He batting 401, he led the National League in average that year. And he really led the rest of the century when you look at it. I mean, nobody topped it again. Nobody knew at the time. It was sort of the beginning of the end of a period where any hitter would hit in the 400s.
Right, absolutely. Ted Williams is the last one. I mean,
yeah, and that was almost, that's a decade after it.
Right,
but
exactly.
Nobody had done it. If you look right before Bill Terry, all kinds of guys were hitting 400.
Roger Hornsby did it a bunch, yeah.
But then all of a sudden, it's like the guillotine comes down and it's chopped off. And, so it was pretty surprising even when Ted Williams did it because so much time had passed. But nobody thought it was the end, but it did turn out to be. I still wish Tony Gwynn had got there with that strike year of 394 that he hit, I believe.
Right.
That would have been, that would have thrown everything out of kilter, but it would have been cool.
And George Brett came close in 1980 when he hit 390.
Correct.
It's kind of interesting if you stop and think about it. It's been exactly 70 years since Ted Williams hit 406. He hit 406 in 1941. 70 years.
Actually, 80 years. 80
years, right,
yeah.
80 years. And I forgot how to do math. Even more impressive.
Arithmetic, yes. 80 years, indeed.
80 years, yeah.
And
wow.
90 for Bill Terry.
90 for Bill Terry. It's amazing how that has stood for so long. Isn't that crazy?
It's, we don't see the threat. I mean, what's I didn't even look at the current averages. What's the best anybody's hitting these days? 330s? Maybe?
Nick Castellanos is leading the majors in batting average.
He's still leading it now? I just saw him play last week, and he was at 320.
Okay, so he's tied with Trey Turner. They're both at 320.
Yeah.
That is 80 points shy of 400. See, that math I can do. 80 points shy of 400. No one is hitting 400 anytime soon, Lou. Especially now that no one cares about batting average.
I do. I'm an old style guy. I do
right.
like. I care about wins and losses too.
Right,
in a pitcher. I do too. I guess I'm just old fashioned, but I still think it matters if you win a game.
I agree.
But I live in Reds territory. I'm about 80 miles from there, so I've seen the Reds and Castellanos play about 5 or 6 times this year. But he started off on fire. And I think last Friday is when I last saw a game, and he was around 320, right about where he is now. But he had been higher at the All-Star break. I think he was 345-ish.
Yeah, somewhere around there. No, he's having a great year. It's just 80 points shy of the magic number of 400.
Yeah, I mean we're nobody's hitting like they in
like
the
they
stratosphere.
No question about that. Talking to Lew Freedman, the author of 1930, the story of a baseball season when hitters reigned supreme. So how would you describe Babe Ruth's 1930 season?
That's a funny thing, because I think Babe Ruth was the table setter for 1930 with his entire performance from 1920 on. And Babe was great in 1930, just like the Babe was great every year. He just wasn't the best that year. I mean, he just had one of his typical superb seasons where he would, an average year for Babe Ruth around that time would be 40 home runs, 140 RBIs, hit 335, 340, something we would be, praising him to the skies on right now. But he was just sort of in the mix that year because so many guys did so many extraordinary things.
Right. No question about that.
It
It's
wasn't like
weird.
it passed him by. I mean,
Right.
he was right in the middle, right in the mix, and I give him the credit for sort of, like I said, laying the table for everybody who came in that immediate successors or contemporaries, really.
It is kind of interesting that a guy can hit 359 with 49 home runs and 153 RBIs. That's what Ruth did that year.
Yeah.
And it's just ho-hum. No one cares about it. We care more about guys like Al Simmons and Lou Gehrig and guys like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's because Ruth made it so commonplace in his career. That's just a fabulous season. But he did it all the time.
Right.
That's the thing. Other guys came along, and it was sort of the nouveau riche, so to speak. The guys who hadn't done it before got a lot of attention because it wasn't expected of them. Ho-hum is kind of maybe overstating it, but your point is well made. People were used to seeing that from Ruth.
Right.
They weren't used to seeing it. And Al Simmons, he led the league in hitting, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, and the A's were pretty loaded too, right then. The A's of that stretch of time, that 3-year period, was sort of the Connie Mack's second dynasty, with Jimmy Fox and Al Simmons together in the lineup, and Lefty Grove, the fluke on the mound, where the only pitcher nobody could touch all year.
Right. Right. I was actually just about to ask you about the 1930 Philadelphia Athletics. Fantastic segue. What can you tell us about them?
Oh, they were great. I mean, they didn't think it was an automatic situation where they were going to win the pennant again. I mean, Mack was very wary. The Yankees were very strong, but they were a very, very strong team. And as the season went on, they did kind of pull away. They did have 4 Hall of Famers on the team. Besides, we mentioned Jimmy Fox, who also had a fairly decent season with 37 homers and 156 RBIs and his .335 average.
Yeah, that's just okay.
Yeah, and Simmons actually got more RBIs with 165 and hit .381. But
right.
Mickey Cochran was on that team, another Hall of Famer, and he batted .357. And then the 4th Hall of Famer in the team was the pitcher, Lefty Grove. I mean, he was in a year that most of the pitchers were getting clobbered. They just could not master the situation. He went 28-5, and he had a .254 earned run average. He led, baseball in wins, earned run average, strikeouts. He, somewhere along the way, Mack figured out that the best guy in his bullpen was Lefty Grove if he would bother to come in and pitch an extra couple innings. So he, retroactively, since the category didn't even exist at the time, he ended up with 9 saves as well. I mean, his winning percentage was like almost .850.
Right.
So, the second best earned run average was .331 by Wes Ferrell. And, what's that, .8 behind Grove? I mean,
right.
It was like the Lefty Grove League and all the rest of the guys.
So let me ask you this. Why was Grove so much better than every other pitcher in baseball that year? Obviously, Grove was a great pitcher. All right, Hall of Famer, well-deserved,
yes.
No question about that.
On his way to 300 wins.
Right. One of the best pitchers in baseball history, no question about that. But why was he so much better in 1930 than everyone else?
He adjusted to the circumstances. The ball was different that year, and the pitchers couldn't throw with their usual style, their usual form. But Grove made it work. I mean, force of will. I mean, he had a fastball and a curve, and really didn't have a whole lot else. But he didn't need it.
Right.
At that point, he also was in the. You could say. That wasn't even his best year. It came in a stretch of time where he was at his absolute best.
No, his best year was the year after.
Yeah, which he was, 31-4, I think, or something like that? I mean, even
with
better.
With a 2.06 ERA. Isn't that incredible?
Oh, we would be bowing down to him every day. He would be he would be the Sports Center highlight show every 4th day, right?
Right.
Of course, it would be the fifth day these days. Never mind the idea of coming out of the bullpen to pick up those saves.
I know.
The only time we see that these days is in an emergency playoff or World Series situation.
Here's what's crazy. Grove's 9 saves in 1930 actually led all of baseball that year. Isn't that wild?
Well, it was a different world for relief pitchers.
Right.
It was an insult to be a relief pitcher almost. If you weren't a starter, you were a nobody, is what they, for the most part. There were, never mind closers. The specialist of a relief pitcher was almost an unknown quantity.
What's a closer?
What's a closer? I mean, even closer is a much more recent term. That was never even mentioned in my youth. Of course, my youth is a long time ago now. But, I mean, my youth was when Roy Face was coming out of the bullpen for the Pirates with, the greatest relief record of all time, 18-1 in the 60s, was it?
In 59, yeah.
Yeah, right at that time. I mean, so you could still do stuff like that because relief pitchers pitch several innings.
Right.
So, I mean, there weren't short men and long men and closers and whatever. I mean, it was you got plucked out of the bullpen, and if you were on, you stayed in the game.
That's the way it should be now. Jake Odorizzi gets pulled the other day after throwing 66 pitches through 5 innings because Dusty Baker didn't want him to go 3 times through the order. The Astros bullpen nearly blows that game. That ticks me off a lot, let me tell you that.
I agree with you completely. Those things, as much as I love Dusty, but those things irk me no end in the modern game of somebody was pulled after, wasn't he still throwing a no-hitter? No, the guy finally gave up a hit in the 7th inning, so they didn't have to make the choice, I guess, and take him out. No, somebody did get taken out. Was thrown in a no-hitter, 6 or 7.
The Yankees were being no-hit by the Orioles. The Orioles started a guy by the name of Chris Ellis, who 99% of Orioles fans wouldn't know if he came to their house and delivered them a pizza, but
they might not accept it if they told him he was with the Orioles this year, 50 games under 500 like they are.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, they are one sorry team, boy. When the Yankees almost get no hit by them and lose a series against them in September. Don't get me started on my team.
Hey, the American League East is pretty crowded right now.
Tell me about it.
Yeah,
Yankees
Toronto. I remember reading a story a couple weeks ago where somebody predicted that Toronto was going to make a run, and I thought with all those teams ahead of them, there was no chance, but now they're right there.
See, the thing with the Blue Jays that bodes well for them is that they still have 7 games left against the Orioles. So if they can win all of those games or go 6-1, even 5-2, that helps them out immensely. In essence, those are free games. Would you agree with that?
Just about. I mean, if you look at the Orioles' winning percentage, that'd be something if the Orioles turn out to be spoilers.
Well, they've been spoilers to the Yankees. The Orioles right now are 44-93. They were the first team in the majors to be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. Last team to 40 wins. They are a joke, and the Yankees can't beat them. Meanwhile, the Rays can, and we'll see if the Blue Jays can. But that's going to come back and haunt the Yankees, possibly, their inability to beat a dreadful Orioles team. There's no question about that.
Are they taking Jim Palmer out of the broadcast booth for some of those games? Or I tell you, I wonder. I mean, I never even heard of half of the pitching staff.
No one has. I'm telling you, you could send the entire Orioles team to a season ticket holder's house, and he would not be able to point out who these guys are. These guys are schmageggies. These guys have no place on a major league roster. All due respect to guys like Cedric Mullins and Ryan Mountcastle and Trey Mancini. They're having good years, but most of these guys wouldn't even sniff a major league roster if they were on another team. John Means, too, is a good player.
They would fit in very well with some of the pitching staffs of 1930. I mean, guys came and went that season who were inexplicable. I mean, if you chart their careers, there was such a pitching shortage, and I'm not sure how it dwindled to such a low level that season. And there was nothing to compare with the Philadelphia Phillies in 1930. They were so horrible as a pitching staff that they, as a team, what did they hit? 315 or something, and they still finished last. And they finished 52 and 102. Yeah, they hit 315. What team hits 315 and loses twice as many games?
I know.
I mean, that's an illustration of the pitching staff. The pitching staff, and nobody came to watch them either. Their season-long attendance total was 299,000. So a lot of people missed it.
Well, here's the thing. If you look at the National League wins leaders for that year, and I'm talking pitchers who were at the top of the National League wins leaderboard, the top three was Pat Malone, Ray Kremer, and Freddie Fitzsimmons. All due respect to them, those guys are unknown today. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, they are, but they were pretty good pitchers. Kremer, I think, was one of those guys who got a very late start in the majors, who, if he had come up earlier, you wonder what he might have accomplished, because I think he did quite a bit at an advanced age. Malone was a solid pitcher for the Cubs.
And won a World Series with the Yankees.
But I think he drank a lot, too. I think he was a guy whose career went down because of a few more beers than he should have had. I'm not
that I don't know.
I think that's true of him. And then, and Dazzy Vance though did lead the league in earned run average and was like Grove in the American League in terms of being so far ahead of his competition that year. But he didn't have a super record. I mean, there's a guy who did go in the Hall of Fame. It wasn't like he wasn't a good, but he had an inexplicably good earned run average compared to everybody else.
Right. So, 17 and 15 with a 2.61 ERA.
Yeah, the 2.61 was the milestone of the year. Led the league. I think it was the second best record in baseball, the ERA in baseball to Groves.
Well, let me tell you, second to Vance in the National League in ERA that year was Carl Hubble. His ERA was 3.87. So that's over a run separating the guy in first place and the guy in second place. Isn't that crazy?
It's absolutely crazy. And the fact that it's Carl Hubble, who was a Hall of Fame pitcher, having an off year.
Right.
So for Carl Hubble, that was a bad year.
That was a bad year, no question.
Yeah. I mean, given his record, he was terrific. But some of these guys, you just look at the numbers and you think their manager just was ready to throw anybody out on the mound to try to fix things. I mean, I think the best pitcher on the Phillies had an 11-15 record. But
in 1930,
Ray Benke, I mean, but his ERA was 5.70.
Well, Phil Collins had a good year that year. He was 16 and 11 with a 4.78 ERA. Yeah.
Yeah, but his earned run still was no good.
No, it's not. I'm just saying he was technically the ace of that staff. Technically.
Yeah.
I use that term very loosely.
The ace being the word in quotes, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, guys like Les Sweetland, 7-15, 7.71 earned run average.
Claude Willoughby, 4-17, 7.59 ERA.
That's right. I mean, we're talking embarrassing numbers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just numbers that, the manager couldn't keep putting them out there. He kind of keep finding guys to throw out there but you would think by hitting a dartboard, he would have come up with a few guys who might have done better.
Well, it's kind of funny. 1930 was Pete Alexander's last year in the majors. He pitched 9 games for the Phillies that year.
That's right. And I think I wrote in the book that he was guilty of being embarrassed by this group, that it was a shame that he had to finish up with guys like this.
I know.
But
really
he was truly at the end.
No, of course. He was 43. He can be forgiven.
Yeah, they were. There was like a situation where they were dreaming in the preseason that he was going to be able to pitch well and come up with some shades of what he used to be, and it just never happened for a minute.
No,
he really almost embarrassed himself. This is a guy who won over 30 games 3 times. is the tied for the third most wins in history, and
right.
But he couldn't pick off. He couldn't make himself useful to the horrible Phillies pitching staff that year. It was a shame. I mean, really, it was an embarrassing end. And then he became a barnstormer with the House of David.
The funny thing,
which he didn't want to do really, but he didn't know what else to do with himself at the time.
The funny thing about the 30 Phillies is that their manager actually went on to do some pretty good things. Bert Schotten was the manager of the Phillies that year.
Yes.
He won 2 pennants for the Dodgers. Isn't that crazy?
Right. And like Connie Mack, when he managed late in his career, he did it in street clothes.
Right.
And I think he
promised his wife.
Yeah, because he told her he was hanging up the uniform. And when he came back, under the pressure from Branch Rickey to run the Dodgers, he stuck to that promise for his wife, which you have to say was sort of weaseling around it, right? I don't think she really meant his clothes. I think she meant his commitment to running a team.
Technically, he kept his word.
Yeah, right. That's what I mean. I think that was a creative response to his pledge to his wife. But was it in the movie?
It was in 42.
In 42, where he comes in the locker room and he's wearing a jacket, a Dodgers jacket, instead of a uniform or street clothes.
Great movie, by the way.
Yeah, great movie. But I think that was like a compromise for what Schotten should wear compared to real life and what he wanted to wear, and just wear one of those jackets that if you're a fan you could buy in the team store.
Right. Talking to Lew Freedman, the author of 1930, the story of a baseball season when hitters reigned supreme. So how would you describe the NL pennant race in 1930?
I have to remember it. I was so caught up in the individuals. Because that was what was so much fun.
Right.
It was like...
But he had a dogfight towards the end.
It was close for a while. It was close. And I think, when it came down to the end, Dodgers were still hanging around. The Cardinals, but the and the Cubs. I mean, there were some teams that had some decent records who figured out how to win games, even if they didn't know how to do it with pitching. But the Cardinals were loaded with 300 hitters too. I think they had a 300 hitter at every position.
They did.
And they prevailed. And then, so they were a terrific hitting team. They may not have had the power of the A's or the Yankees, but they had guys, everybody could hit on the team. And it comes down to the World Series, and you figured, the A's were heavily favored. They won 10 more games during the regular season, and they pulled away gradually as the season went on. It was close for a while. The Yankees were, it was just one of those few years around that time where it wasn't Yankees time. It was A's time. And, they won 102 games, and they figured to, blitz the Cardinals, and everybody figured, look at the way the hitting's been all year, both teams are going to hit 400, It's going to be high-scoring World Series, and it turned out to be a low-scoring, low-hitting World Series.
Right.
It was very ironic end of that season. That pitching actually prevailed. And the Athletics, I think, hit 197 and won the series and won the championship after their great year. I mean, it didn't figure at all. It was just another part of a season that you couldn't have predicted.
Unbelievable. So, what can you tell us about the 1930 St. Louis Cardinals?
They had a lot of good ball players, and they had some guys who, as I guess shouldn't be surprising, had some of the greatest years of their careers. It was a year when a lot of people look back and said 1930 was the best I ever played if they were a hitter. And some people never had another year like it, and a guy like George Showboat Fisher was one of those. I'm not sure how much his name endures in baseball lore, but he had
not
been
much.
A fairly nondescript player for most of the 20s. And then in 1930, he can't make it out. He's just hitting like crazy. He had some big hitting minor league years. You wonder about guys who, way back when, who hit 350 or so in the minors and never got a chance. I always wonder what was going on at the time that they never, sometimes they got a chance and didn't produce. That happened. So, but the guys who never even got a chance, but then you have a guy like Showboat Fisher who finally gets a chance. He plays in 92 games. He bats 374, and his on-base percentage is 432. It's like, where did this guy come from? Who hits 374 in 300 plate appearances? And you never hear from him again. I mean, it's pretty rare.
Yeah, he didn't even play in the 31 season. You'd think after that he would have earned a spot on a team.
I think he held out for more money.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
Too much. Too much more money. And I don't think they believed in him. They thought it was a fluke, and given the rest of his career as he bounced around, he never came close again.
Right.
Guys like George Watkins, he was another guy who played some, that year. Nobody knew who he was. He hit 373.
Right.
And guys off the bench, Ray Blades, how much do we remember him? We know his name a little bit. Became a manager, I believe, but he hit 396. Can you imagine if he had 400 off the bench? You might remember him because it would come up every decade or so.
Right.
So, the Cardinals just had bat after bat to call upon to throw into a game. And
easy to manage that team if you're Gabby Street, right?
Yeah, their pinch hitters were loaded,
Right.
Gus Mancuso hits 366 off the bench. Guy like Ernie Orsatti, who we don't know, hit 321. They were all like that. Yeah, it was pretty good lineup for Gabby Street to play with, wasn't
it? Definitely. Oh, man. So why were the stats in 1930 so starkly different from any other year in that era? What was the specific reason?
There was actually a difference in how the ball was made.
Is that all it was? Okay.
That was a big thing. That was, it was, you hear about the lively ball now occasionally, and,
yeah,
and it's not true a lot of the times. This time, it was. The balls were more tightly wound around the cork, and they had a different manufacturer, and the owners took a look at what had happened when the season was over and said, we can't have this. We need more balance. So they made a rules change, and it did go away very quickly. That was the thing. It didn't last. It wasn't like debated for years, and our contract with Rawlings in the Dominican Republic still goes on, so we got to have you go through it again. There was nothing like that,
Right.
So they fixed it.
Right.
They fixed it quickly. That's really what we have, and that's why it's a 1-year anomaly.
Let me say this. Not that long ago, we had a year where the ball was just flying off the bat, and this was in both of our lifetimes. It was 2019. A guy like Brett Gardner hits 28 home runs, and the reason was that the ball was different. Is it fair to say that 1930 and 2019 have some similarities?
The difference is there are a lot of people talking about it in 2019. I didn't see baseball owners, and the commissioner admitting, oh, yeah, everything was done differently, and we're going to make sure it's not happening again. They were saying it's all in your head. They were kind of blaming people's imagination and that it was
right.
And that, it wasn't in the manufacturer, but it was. So,
right.
Also, there were a few other things like the sacrifice fly rule was changed, so that dropped, some averages as well. But there was nothing like the 1 year difference was huge.
Definitely. No question about that.
Yeah. But the center of the baseball, there was the cork center was also, it was a mixture of cork and rubber. So,
okay.
And then, like I said, they tamed the ball. a little bit for the next season.
Right.
And nowadays, guys can't even make contact.
I know.
So, I mean, they hit a home run or they walk or strike out. What's up with that? You know?
Oh, don't get me started. Friggin' Joey Gallo. Guy's driving me nuts. Oh, jeez.
Yeah. But is anybody going to hit 380 on singles? No, we don't have that. We don't have 380. Right. We don't have 370, 60, 50, 40.
See, here's what's wrong with baseball today. A guy like Derek Jeter, who just went into the Hall of Fame today,
yes.
Would he still be great? The answer is yes, but he wouldn't be as appreciated now as he was when he played. Would you agree with that?
It depends who's saying the appreciation. That's the part where, I mean, certain amount of writers have tilted over, to that way of thinking. And they don't mind. I guess, guys, when you see it every single day, if you go every single day, you get used to what you see.
Right.
And, I sit in the stands, I don't know, half a dozen times a year and listen to the people talk. And, I don't know anybody that likes to, putting the runner on second base to start extra innings, tampering with the rules like that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the only person who likes that rule. I like the excitement it brings. I like the finality. I know I'm in the minority, but I'll be honest with you, I do like it.
I like the purity without it.
I get it.
That's why.
I totally get it.
That you score a run the same way you score a run. I'm not so keen on 7-inning double headers. It sounds like
that
Little
I hate.
League. That's like Little League.
I hate that.
Yeah. So, I don't know what's going to go away after this year, but the more people that I have talked to just like the runner on second base.
Right.
They feel that it gives them the creeps that it's like not cheating, but like it's an advantage that they don't want to see.
Right.
So I just had an email from a friend of mine, another old curmudgeon, right? Just about within the last week, and he listed all of those kinds of rules he didn't like in the new game, and those two were on him.
Oh man.
So, yeah, but hey, the games get tweaked. I mean, nothing. It's funny because no game has been tweaked as much as basketball when you look at the original rules.
No question. The 3-point rule.
Well, nobody dunked.
Yeah.
Nobody dribbled. Nobody was dribbling, I don't think. And you just have to pass it.
The 24-second shot clock. We had games that were ending like 30 to 28.
There was a game that was in the teens in the early 50s with the Fort Wayne Pistons and the Minneapolis Lakers. I think that was the game that actually propelled the change.
I think you're right.
It was something like 17 to 16 or something. And that was the game. And the guy who worked for the Syracuse Nationals was the guy who invented the clock.
All right, that makes sense, Lou. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, as always.
Right. Yep, that was Lew Freedman. His book is 1930, the story of a baseball season when hitters reigned supreme. Thanks for listening. Here comes the outro.
Thanks for the plug, Jacob from the past. It does mean a lot. New York Jets season preview comes your way tonight. Right after the Jets game on Sunday, you're going to get an instant recap. Monday night, you're going to get a New York Yankees show. Hopefully, I have good things to say about them, because if I was to do that show tonight, I'd have nothing but bad things to say. I am going to all 3 Yankees-Mets games, though. So that should be fun. Keyword should. Regular episodes of The Jacob Valk Show come your way every weekday afternoon. Monday's show is going to be really special because you're going to get an interview that I did with Gary Webster, the author of a book on the Cleveland Barons, the short-lived NHL team in the mid-1970s. He's an incredibly nice guy. I really like talking to him. Until next time, I'm Jacob Valk, And always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.